For the past few weeks, I've been working on a game in Unity, a game that follows a hero on a journey to find a prince lost in a world full of wonder and mystery. A game that, for now, I'm calling Project Fire. I've been rather silent as of late due to working on the fundamentals of this project and tuning all the moving parts in hopes to produce something that will entertain players. Now, the game is still very early in development since I started this project just a few weeks ago, but I figured I'd show you all the moving parts of this project to give you a sense of the logic and thinking that I've done to figure stuff out.
Get ready for a deep dive.
Now, first thing I had to figure out was, what type of game am I going to make? From the get-go, I knew I wanted to make something that I personally would like to play. Now, I play a lot of video games, probably an insane amount, some people would say. Like so much so that seeing the sky burns my eyes some days. Anyways, the first game that I thought of doing, just because I was playing it at the time, was Paper Mario. Now, I've always been a big fan of Paper Mario due to the simple mechanics of it and playstyle. Like, how more simple can you get than a Mario game? You run around a small map, you can jump, and you can hit with a hammer. And you beat up enemies in a turn-based combat style, and this is true for the first two games in the series. The other ones, we don't really talk about those. But the first two games also had some really great stories to them as well. It's the same basic formula that Miyamoto has been following for years. Mario has to save Princess Peach from Bowser, it's as simple as that. But what really stood out to me was the little juicy bits that lie in between the beginning and end bread that make up this scrumptious story sandwich. In the second game, Mario fights a dragon to save a village, becomes basically an MMA fighter, and also a detective solving a mystery on a train. And lastly, the art style. There's just something about the 2.5D perspective that really stood out to me. I've always liked the idea of mixing cartoons with reality, like how they did in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. The idea of mixing drawings with a realistic look and environment was always something that I loved, so I guess that's where my love came from. And I guess I'm kind of biased since I basically draw for a living now, so I basically live off of cartoons. Now with Paper Mario living rent-free in my mind, I settled on an RPG similar to it. You run around a small map and talk to people. But by itself, that's not really a game. I mean, even in the early days of RPGs, like the original Legend of Zelda, it had some sort of combat. You had to have some sort of conflict to make the game worth playing. If I left it at my original idea of only running around and talking to people, the conflict would come from the player dying of boredom instead of the character dying. So I had to introduce some sort of conflict into the game. This is where I had a lot of trouble coming up with what type of combat I wanted. I played around a lot with different ideas. Like, what if it's a run and gun game like the Max Payne series? Or maybe something like My Friend Pedro with all the sweet slow motion shooting and flips. Or something as simple as Skyrim, where you basically just swing your sword and hope for the best. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew I had to have something. It took me a good while of trying to figure out what the game needed. But I had an inkling of an idea for the style of combat that would fit not only the principal gameplay, but the art style. Melee combat. I played a lot of Streets of Rage 4 in Super Smash Bros. Being an invincible tank beating up hundreds of enemies against all odds was my jam. I cannot get enough of that. I mean, I'm not good at Super Smash Bros, but that's beside the point. But those games are side-scrollers basically. They fight on a 2D surface like every other fighting game out there. So that wouldn't work on the 3D plane that my game Oh, wait, there is a game that does that. I never played the game, but it looks like it would work perfectly. The Batman Arkham series is a fighting game that works on the 3D plane. Batman. I'm Batman. With all his lozenge-needing voice, beats up bad guys like nothing. He goes from baddie to baddie and cuts through them like a hot knife through butter. By gum, I think that's what the game needs. Alright, so with that little nugget of information figured out, I think I have something that I need to make a scrumptious sandwich of a game. But I only had the basic idea of it. You play as a 2D player running around a 3D environment beating up bad guys. But what about all the juice in between? I have the buns and the meat. But what about all the other juicy ingredients like the lettuce, the cheese, the onions, all that other stuff? Well, that I had to figure out on a design document. This is where I wrote down all the ideas that I had for the game. Everything from how you talk to people to how you fight bosses was all jotted down on this document here. Yeah, that's great and all, but what about a story? There's gotta be a reason for you running around and beating up people, otherwise you're basically just... Yeah, this guy. So I decided to take from something that I created a long time ago. A simple story that I made up for a D&D character I made while I was in university. It followed an archer who was a former prince who had run away from his home to find a treasure. Fed up with living a life full of splendor and more importantly boredom, he decided to run away to find a treasure that everyone in his kingdom had talked about that was said to grant wishes. But during this time away, the archer got mixed up with the criminal underworld, became an assassin, hunted people for money to support himself, an average day in paradise. Eventually he got so caught up in his new job that he eventually forgot that he was a prince and that he was looking for the treasure. What followed in the D&D campaign was a job that he took that was going to lead him to the treasure that he eventually forgot about. This originally was meant to be a throwaway story, something that I made for the one character that was meant to be torched. But while thinking of a new story for the game, I figured, why not use the same character? He was a prince who only had a mother. He was looking for the treasure in a world full of magic. What would the story be like if it was told from the perspective of someone who was looking for the lost prince? Someone who didn't know that the prince had become a criminal. Someone who only wanted him home with the Queen Mother. Well, that's what really set this whole project in motion. So, as I said in the beginning, I'm making this game called Project Fire in Unity that follows a hero looking for a lost prince in a world full of wonder and mystery. I'll be doing more of these video log things in the future, showing you what I've been doing in the game and all the logic that I've put into making something that players will hopefully love. So if you're interested in what lives rent-free in my mind, then consider subscribing and looking out for new videos that I'll be making. Until then, I guess I'll see you later.